In a stunning discovery, police in Turkey have recovered a Bible believed to be 1,000 years old. This truly is a remarkable find, fragments of a biblical scroll. Turkish authorities have confirmed that this ancient Bible is estimated to be 1,500 years old. Recently, theological researchers uncovered a 500-year-old Bible. In a discovery that has shocked the religious community, this scriptural text is far from just any random parchment. It promises and holds numerous secrets that shape both Christianity and humanity as we know it. In a bid to uncover knowledge we never thought existed, this Bible has been unearthed. This is why it has become imperative to understand everything within its pages. What could possibly be in this newly discovered Bible, and how has it remained hidden for so long? Christianity and where it all began. Since the advent of Christianity, there's been a notion that has been quite prevalent. This is the notion that Christianity was conceived and first propagated in Western Europe. While for some, this ideology might be 100% valid, it's worth knowing that it's in no way factual. Hence, it's an oversight to assume that this was the case. Are you still not convinced? Then what do you make of a Bible native to a group of people located in the Horn of Africa, precisely in the eastern regions? Evidently, this scriptural book has been found to date back to the ADs, right about the same time that Christianity became a thing. It is not like it contains random things. It does give accounts similar to those of the Bible we know. You might need to sit down as we look deep into this. However, before we talk about this different kind of Bible, let's go back to the time right after the death of the Son of God. If you recall, upon Jesus' resurrection, he had gathered his disciples to give them one sole mission in hopes they would transform the world. In his words, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you." In other words, he was telling them they should go and convert people worldwide into Christendom, making them disciples as well. Now, you should note that he didn't say they should go to Europe. He said that they should go into the world. This is one of the parts that most people have overlooked, letting themselves be convinced by the Europeans. The misconception amongst people is that the spread of Christianity as a religion was started by the Europeans, when, in fact, it was long started by the 12 disciples of Jesus. As such, it was never restricted to one demography or race of people. This religion has long been available for anyone willing to partake. To tell you a little about the disciples' global influence before they faced martyrdom, let's consider a few details about the paths they took for their journeys. Starting with Peter, who was regarded as the rock of the church, he traveled to Rome to spread the gospel. It was right here he established the early church before he was martyred. James the Great established the dominance of Christianity in Spain. As of today, we can see how he is revered in the pilgrimage site in Santiago de Compostela. There's also Andrew, who went around the Black Sea in Greece, and Thomas, who visited India. Philip and Bartholomew went to Turkey and Armenia respectively, while Matthew, Jude, Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot went to Persia. However, along the line, Matthew went on his own to Ethiopia to let them know about Christ. Apparently, while at it, he had already written his gospel. This helped him to spread the word of Christ efficiently. And of course, let's not forget the beloved disciple John, who volunteered to spread the word to some parts of Asia, particularly in Ephesus, and James the Less, who remained in Jerusalem. Did you notice how their outreach was able to reach all the continents on earth? It goes a long way to tell you that every one of them played their fair share in ensuring the prevalence of Christianity. Furthermore, it also shows that from the onset, Christianity was never concealed or restricted to one particular race. Now, don't get things wrong. When we talk about Christianity, it is more dominant in places like Europe. This theory is correct. As a matter of fact, the turning point that led to the dominance of Christianity in Europe dates back to 312 AD, when Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity due to a vision he had seen relating to a battle at Milvian Bridge. It was because of his conversion that Christianity gained a legal status, hence becoming the sole religion of the empire. It didn't end there. Towards the end of the 4th century, Emperor Theodosius I also made Christianity the state religion of the Roman Empire, sealing its influence for good. Even after the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, Christianity's influence didn't falter one single bit. Instead, the Church took over the power vacuum, unifying Europe that was fragmented. The papacy, being one of the main players, took over by negotiating with barbarian kings and then the rulers of the European states. This was how Christianity as a religion was able to stand the test of time. Then again, the major population of Europe majorly consisted of atheists at the time, so it was pretty easy to sway them to hold on to the faith. This was a different narrative for several other lands. For instance, while the Turks practiced Islam, the Asians and Persians practiced Buddhism and Zoroastrianism respectively. And so because they already had a religion that came from their ancestry, they weren't ready to accept Christianity. Of course, you can tell about their disapproval of the several persecutions that the disciples face. Even though the disciples were later expunged from societies, they had already made their mark. You should know that this little narration about Christianity in Europe was to prove that we get the dominant ideology. However, what remains is that the statement refers to the Europeans being referred to as the sole people who spread Christianity to other parts of the world, and the place where Christianity was born is flawed. Talking about Christianity, it would even be better to say that the religion emanated from Judaism, which focuses on the Old Testament and leaves out anything that has to do with the Trinity. This would make more sense after all. Judaism long existed before Christianity. Now that we've been able to clear most of that misconception, we can easily approach the topic with an open mind. Just like we said initially, a Bible was discovered in a place in Africa that no one had ever imagined, Ethiopia. However, now you wouldn't easily think of this as unimaginable when you get to consider the amount of work the disciples put in. What we are after here is the content of this supposed scriptural Bible and how it came to be therein. And so we'd be giving answers to questions like how the Bible came to exist in the first place, what the content of the Bible is, and how it is that no one ever knew it existed. Stick around. You are about to get hit by the shocking truth. The Christian land nobody knew about. In our earlier narration in this video, do you remember one of the places where we said the disciple Matthew went to introduce Christianity? Of course, Ethiopia is one of them. The country we've come to know today as Ethiopia was once a thriving civilization known as the Kingdom of Axum. For a civilization in the eastern part of Africa, it thrived in trade, culture, and architecture like none other in the region. As a matter of fact, due to its location, it was also a player in the Red Sea trade that linked both the Roman Empire and India, the very sea we believe that Matthew came in from. That said, what if we tell you that Matthew's very appearance made Ethiopia become one of the very first civilizations to adopt Christianity in the 4th century AD? Yes, you heard that right. Ethiopia adopted Christianity a long way before most of Europe. You probably wouldn't see this in your regular history books, but it's a fact, one that the Europeans have suppressed over the years. Before the arrival of Christianity, the religious landscape of Ethiopia, or the Kingdom of Axum, if you may, worshipped different deities. The numbers were vast because there were several indigenous beliefs, and people around the land practiced different religions. One of the gods they worshipped was Maram, the one who they claimed protected the kings. They also worshipped Astar and Beher. During their worship, they'd perform rituals and animal sacrifices, and even consult oracles to try to establish communication between them and these gods. This continued for quite a while until Frumentius was involved. You should note that Frumentius in question isn't Matthew. Most accounts have come to use both names interchangeably when, in fact, they are two different people. While Matthew had appeared in Ethiopia back in the day, you can say Frumentius did the bulk of the work. However, if we are one to say it wasn't an easy job. On setting foot in Ethiopia, Frumentius, who happened to be a Syrian Christian, was captured alongside his brother Odysseus. It was at the Aksumite court that he gained the favor and the trust of King Azana. As a result of trust, the king eventually made him his advisor. However, the man didn't restrict himself to advice. As he exerted his influence, he soon started teaching the king about Christianity. This was how the king converted, and Christianity was declared a state religion. After the declaration by King Azana, it wasn't long before the multiple traditional practices started to fade away. By the time Christianity was well established in the land, Frumentius became the very first bishop of Axum. This was 330 AD. Apparently, he went on to lay the very first foundation of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Now you see that all these while Ethiopia has been set apart from the world. Their religious practice didn't fade all this while. Instead, it grew stronger as time advanced, thanks to the establishment of the Church. The traditions of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church aren't like the others that evolved under the influence of the Roman Empire. The Ethiopian Church developed its very own distinct practices and beliefs based on the historical context of Ethiopia. You might probably think, doesn't that make them not a part of Christianity? No, not at all. If you must know, the Church practices the faith, believes in God and His commandments, and keeps the Sabbath days like the others, you can say the only difference is that their approach differs from the others. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church is its preservation of Judaic elements, a reflection of the ancient Jewish presence in Ethiopia. As a matter of fact, the Church observed dietary laws similar to kosher rules, practiced circumcision on the 8th day, and celebrated several Jewish holidays, including Passover, with Christian interpretations. Now, these are all of the traditions and practices of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. However, nothing cuts them off from the other Christian denominations, like their Bible. Apparently, the Bible that this church has been using is one they wrote themselves, completely different from the popular Bible that we all know. And this very Bible goes way back to the time the church was created. Isn't that fascinating? You must know that both Bibles actually differ in a lot of ways, but they both point towards the Scriptures. We are going to tell you all about them right now, so buckle up as we reveal some things that supersede time. The oldest Bible on earth. Looking at the Bible being used in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, it should be obvious by now that it's the oldest of the scriptures out there. So let's talk about the compilation of the book. For starters, the Bible comprises books from the Old Testament and the New Testament, as well as additional texts that you can't find in the Bible of other Christian denominations. In total, that makes up 81 books, which is 21 books more than the regular Bible that we know. What adds up to make up the 81 books of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible are books like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Prayer of Manasseh, and the Book of the Shepherd of Hermas, to mention a few. The bulk of the Bible are the other books you are conversant with in the regular Bible. It might interest you to know that some of the books are subdivided into several categories. Take, for instance, the Book of Enoch. It is divided into the Book of the Watchers, the Book of Parables, the Astronomical Books, the Book of Dream Visions, and the Epistle of Enoch. The Book of the Watchers is basically all about the fall of the Watchers, or, as we popularly know them, the fallen angels. It tells a story of how they not only descended to earth, but how they mated with human women to give birth to the Nephilim that brought chaos to the world. On the other hand, the Book of Parables has to do with the visionary parables that address the fate of the righteous and those who have sinned. It gives an account of what waits for them in the final days and the coming of Christ. Astronomical Book is basically a summary of Enoch's astronomical and cosmological knowledge. It talks about what prompts the movement of the celestial bodies and how they move. Some might even say it has little to do with astrology. The Book of Dream Visions is almost similar to the Book of Parables, in that it recounts symbolic dreams and visions from creation day to the final day of judgment. The Epistle of Enoch simply has to do with blessings and admonitions, stating why it's necessary to follow the righteous path. It's said that the Book of Enoch was dropped due to its controversial content about demons and angels. How about the Book of Jubilees? This one is more like an ancient Jewish text that offers a unique revised narration of the Book of Genesis and parts of Exodus. Due to its correlation with the first books of the Bible, some like to refer to this book as the Little Genesis. As a matter of fact, it was written between the 2nd century BCE and the 1st century CE and has long been preserved as a part of the Ethiopian Bible. The Book of Jubilees entails a highly detailed and structured story that covers the life of biblical patriarchs such as Adam, Noah, Abraham, and Moses. It also incorporates extensive angelic interventions, attributing the law given to Moses on Mount Sinai to the angel of the presence, thereby underscoring the divine origin of the Jewish legal and moral code. In summary, it just talks about how the angelic mediation reflects the Jewish apocalyptic worldview of the time, which saw history as a battleground between good and evil forces. Amongst all the scriptural text in the Ethiopian Bible, you might find the Kebra Nagast most interesting. Also known as the Glory of Kings, this one dates back to the 14th century, when oral traditions were invoked. It's said that the Kebra Nagast traces the lineage of Ethiopian emperors to the era of the biblical King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Apparently, the Ethiopians believe that Queen Sheba came from their ancestral line. To tell you how much they believe this, they even have a native name they call the Queen. They call her Makeda. It's said that when Queen Sheba went to see King Solomon, she stayed there for some time. The fruit of her stay was that she produced a son named Menelik the Fierce, the very first emperor of Ethiopia. According to the Kebra Nagast, Menelik I brought the Ark of the Covenant from Jerusalem to Ethiopia. This was how the Ethiopian royalty and the ancient Israelite kings came to form a bond. In the era of civilizations, the Kebra Nagast was quite important for kings to show and tell legitimacy. That's not all. It also made Ethiopia a chosen nation, one that was truly chosen by God. In summary, every book tells a lot that has long been untold. Looking at the Ethiopian Bible, there's nothing much that you'll say contradicts the content of the regular Bible. It's true that some of the narrations actually differ from the original Bible. However, they are pretty much the same. You can even say that the Ethiopian Bible is a little more unrefined, having all the details therein, unlike the Bible we are used to. With that said, what if we tell you that the details that were left out in the Bible were intentional? Sadly, the Bible isn't all that it appears to be. It was curated with a ploy, one that many had never noticed all these past years. Luckily for you, that's about to change. Relax as we get to the peak of the story. The hidden truths. Nobody knew about the Bible. Having provided an overview of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church Bible, it is reasonable to question why the Ethiopian Bible has remained largely unknown. If you find yourself pondering this, it is important to understand that political, rather than purely theological reasons, are largely responsible for its obscurity. According to Western theological views, what has long been said is that the Ethiopian Bible is an illegal version of the real thing, a distorted version of the actual Bible. There have been times when people even went on to say it's satanic, naming it all sorts of things. However, having approached the subject with an open mind, would you say that's the case? Obviously not. When you consider the availability and prevalence of the two Bibles, you'll find out that it's based on dominance and not accuracy or age. The early Christian Church and the First Council of Constantinople compiled the Protestant Bible, with which we are all conversant. They are the ones who determined which writings were inspired and of apostolic origin. As a matter of fact, the First Council of Constantinople played a major role in this process. They did so by building on decisions earlier made by the councils of Hippo and Carthage. What they said were their criteria for inclusion were the authors, consistency with established Christian doctrine, and popular acceptance and usage in the liturgy across the Christian communities. Now, this is what we were told. Until King James came along in 1611 and compiled a set of scholars from the Church of England to create a new English translation of the Bible, the one we've come to know today as the King James Version Bible. To someone unaware, the King James would look more like a poetic, simplified version of the Bible. It's got easily understandable texts, it's well detailed, and all of that is quite true. However, its fancy texts are merely on the surface meant to deceive the masses. The sole reason why the king had ordered the production of the Bible was to lure the people into total submission to the monarchy's rule. This was his means out of a sticky solution at the time, which had to do with the tension between different Christian dominations. And with the aftermath, we can say his predictions were correct. Highlighting mainly the texts that portrayed obedience to the crown, he could subdue his people. However, that didn't end there. On seeing how successful the king was, the church adopted the same system to subdue the other denominations, taking an extra step to suppress and demonize any scripture that would emanate from them. The Ethiopian church and their Bible are some of the people who have long been suffering this marginalization. Thankfully, things are starting to change. In recent times, theological researchers have taken it upon themselves to translate the Bible from Ge'ez to the country's modern language. It's believed that once that has been achieved, getting several other translations for people's consumption will become much easier. If that happens, or when that happens, we might finally get a real sight of what the scriptures look like. We hope you enjoyed this one. What do you think about the church's politics? Can we say it prevails even to this day, or is it something of the past? We'd like to know your thoughts, so do drop a comment in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe too. Have fun.